My tool journal will have 3 signatures in it, and here I have already started to build those signatures. The first signature will, as you can see, have 7 tool pages, and the size of each page in my case is 10 3/4 by 8 1/4. I have printed the pages with white borders, which I trimmed once everything was printed out. And then when I added more tea stain papers and grid papers to my signatures, I had to trim them down to the size of the printed ones so that all of them look the same. This first signature, for example, will have 7 pages, and it will start with the tea stain paper. Then I will have the printed page design from the kit. Then I will have the grid paper, another tea stained page, another one with the printed pattern on it, and another grid page, and another tea stained paper sheet. So that's the first signature. Now, it was easy to print the vertical page designs on both sides and use them in building the signature. What about the journaling pages? This time I didn't print the regular horizontal journaling page designs, but I went to the smaller size where there were 2 pages per sheet, 2 smaller pages per sheet, and I went ahead and printed those also on both sides. You're also going to trim them down, and these smaller pages I plan to incorporate between the tool pages in my journal. If you will print everything, and you also will have 3 signatures in your journal, it means that each one of the 3 signatures will have 4 double-sided small journaling pages. So my plan is to attach them between the pages like so. So if I have, let's say I don't have a designer paper on either of those pages, so I will put the small journaling pages in there, and also in here, and they will fit nicely one next to another like so. And you're welcome to position them closer to each one, or maybe more to the top and the bottom of the signature, but that's at least my plan and how I'm going to have them in the journal that I will construct together with you. So that's the first signature. Let me clip the pages together so that they don't go anywhere. Now the second signature will be constructed the same way. I have 4 double-sided small journaling pages, and I have this time, I think, not 2 vertical designer papers, but 3. So my signature will start with the page from the kit. Then I will have 1 tea stain paper and 1 grid paper sheet, then another page with the printed design on it, and a tea stain paper, and a grid paper, and another printed one from the kit, and the tea stained sheet. So now, once we have that ready, let's think where we can put our small journaling pages. So I think they will be here and here, and 2 more we can probably put between these pages, like so. And then the third signature will have, again, only 2 vertical printed pages, and the rest will be the tea stained papers and the papers from the notebook. Okay, and again, I have 4 smaller journaling pages that we will have to incorporate between our tool pages. Let's assemble that again the same way we did with the first signature, like so. And then you just choose where you want to put the small pages, and I want to have them right here. And it's not important which designs you print where. They can be, of course, different from what I have in here. So that's the third signature. I have a template for poking the holes, and this template, it is also 10 3/4 of an inch long, the same length as the pages after I trimmed them down. And I will use 5 holes pamphlet stitch binding method for attaching my signatures to the spine of the journal. So I have already marked the places for those 5 holes, and if you start to mark from one of the edges, the holes will be at 7/8 of an inch, 3 1/8 of an inch, 5 3/8, 7 5/8, and 9 7/8 of an inch. So that's just a template that I will use for placing inside each one of the signatures and then poking the holes in each one of the signatures the same way. 3 of our signatures will be bound to the inner spine of the journal, and here is the white cardstock piece that I'm going to use for that. The cardstock piece that I have here measures 11 inches long by 4.5 inches wide. There are flaps on each side of this piece, and they're 1.5 inch wide, and then the space between the flaps is also 1.5 inch wide. You can also see that this central area between the folds is scored at every 1/8 of an inch, and this way our spine will be more flexible when the journal is constructed. As you remember, we had 5 holes marked in our template for the binding of the signatures. Now on this piece, we will also have to mark the places for binding the signatures onto. And for doing that, I have made some measurements here, so let me just tell you what exactly you will have to do. You will start by applying some markings on the long edge of this white cardstock piece, and those markings will be at 1 inch, 3 1/4, 5 1/2, 7 3/4, and 10 inches. And I usually like to duplicate those tick marks on the opposite long side of the paper, so that later on I can put my ruler and sort of connect 2 of those tick marks, and then you will be able to draw a line just in the middle area of the cardstock piece, right here on the scored lines, which are 1/8 of an inch away one from another. And that way you will be able to mark with little dots the places where each one of the holes will be. If you want to measure the first set of holes, and there will be 5 of them, so the first set or the first line of holes for binding the first signature will be 1 7/8 of an inch away from the edge of the cardstock piece. Or if you want to count the scored lines on the spine only, this first set of holes will be marked right on top of the third scored line. Right on top of the third score line. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm counting only the score lines which have not been turned into folds like these first ones that we have used for creating the flaps. So the second set of holes will be at 2 1/4 of an inch away from the long edge of our cardstock piece. Or again, from the previous set, you will again count 1, 2, 3 score lines and put your mark in there. And then the third set of holes will be 2 5/8 of an inch away, again from the same long edge of the cardstock. Or again, 1, 2, 3 score lines away from the previous ones. Okay, so once you measure everything, you will have 3 sets of your 5 holes marked on the white cardstock piece, and we'll use a poking tool to poke them just 1 second later. Before poking the holes, I want to cover this side of the paper with a piece of fabric, and you are welcome to use either muslin, which is what I'm using, or cotton. I'm going to attach it using glue stick. My piece is about, let me tell you, it is about 3 inches wide, and you can see that it is longer than the cardstock piece, and that's because I want to be able to fold it over the edges of the paper in the back, and this is how it's going to look like. And in terms of the width, it's important to cover this whole middle area of our spine and then have a little bit of the fabric beyond the fold lines on both sides of the spine. So I'm going to apply the glue now. I'm trying to center it evenly from both of the long edges of the paper. I have ironed this piece already, and I'm ready to fold the short edges over the paper. This is what we have so far. Let's just refold the flaps on the sides. Will be easier for us to see where these side flaps are. I also like to use my bone folder for that. Now at this point, I like to add some stitching along the top and the bottom edges of the piece that will be used for binding the signatures onto. So I will do that and get back to you like that. Don't forget to pull the threads to the back side of your piece and tie some double knots. I also think that I'm going to sew right on top of that fold line to make sure that the fabric stays glued down exactly where I need it to be. And I think that for that, I will use my friction pen. And first of all, I will make sure that I create a guideline just for myself so that I can see where I'm stitching. Okay, so you can either just fold your paper while you hold your ruler right next to that fold and then mark with a pen, or you can measure again, but I think this is actually easier. So I have that line marked. I'm going to sew along the line and then use again my iron and erase the line of the friction pen. And this is how it looks. Now both of these pieces, and I mean the fabric and the paper, are bonded nicely together. We can poke our holes now. I will flip this piece to the back so that I can see where we previously marked each one of the holes, and I'm going to poke them through. Now I can see them on this side of the paper piece as well, and I think we're ready to poke the holes in the signatures using our template. I will clip the pages of my signature together, and also before poking the holes, I want to make sure that the little pages haven't moved. I can clip everything back together, and then I'm just going to hold the template and the set of my pages together and poke through the holes that I have previously marked, just like that. Okay, and then we will rotate the whole stack of pages and poke 2 more holes on this side. Okay, now you can either poke all the holes in all of your signatures, or you can bind each signature one by one, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the 5-hole pamphlet stitch, as I mentioned before. I use thick upholstery thread for attaching my signatures to the spine, and I like to take 2 lengths of my pages with a bit of an extra. So I have about maybe 5 extra inches, 5 or 4 extra inches on each side, both at the top and at the bottom. All 3 of our signatures are now attached to the inner spine of our future journal, and we can keep on working on the cover. For the cover, I'm going to need 2 pieces of medium weight chipboard, and these will both measure 11¼ by 4¼ I will also need a piece of cardstock for the spine, and this time 11 inches long cardstock will not be enough since our cover is longer than that. So for the spine, I had to use a 12 by 12 sheet of cardstock and cut my piece off of that. Now, as far as the scoring goes on that cardstock piece that we're going to use for the spine of our book, I'm going to score it first at 1 inch on the short side from the left. Then I'm going to flip it and score it 1 inch again. And then I'm also going to score at 1¼ flip the piece again to how it was and score at 1¼ Okay, and then this will give me the spacing of 1 5/8 of an inch between the inside 2 score lines. So I'm going to flip my cardstock piece like so and score at every 1/8 of an inch that area between the 2 score lines that I have shown you. Now, we'll need to fold our piece, and I'm going to fold the side flaps, which are 1 inch wide, and make sure that you have your curve facing this way when you fold your flaps in. And then I will also use the second score line, which is 1/4 inch away from the previous one, and also create the fold. Okay, so our covers are going to attach to this piece right next to the 1/4 inch gussets. I thought that for the tall journal, I want to try that technique. That will actually give us a little gap between the actual cover and the edge of the book spine. Now I'm going to assemble this cover separately. I will wrap the spinal piece with fabric, and then I will also independently wrap each one of the front and back covers with fabric as well. And then we will connect all of them into a whole cover. I'm going to start with the covers and then take care of the spine. So for creating the covers, I'm also going to use the ivory colored muslin or cotton you're welcome to use. I'm going to apply glue, and I'm using glue stick, to one side of the chipboard cover. Then I'm going to attach my fabric on top, just making sure that I center it nicely, like that. Now I'm going to iron this area, like that. Now I'm going to wrap the long edges of the fabric and glue them down to the chipboard. When the long edges are glued down to the chipboard, I can move on to the short edges. And for taking care of them, we will need to trim some of the fabric excess. So I'm going to trim just a bit along the very edge of the chipboard, and I suggest that you use your sharp scissors for this step. Now I'm going to trim off this piece like so at a little angle. So that here we have a little bit of the fabric going at an angle like so. Okay, do the same on the opposite side. That's how it needs to look like. Okay, now I will actually take my wet glue and add a tiny amount of that glue close to the edge, and then fold it like so. You will have sort of a triangular fabric fold in that corner. And let's do the same thing here. Okay, and that way you also cover the corner of the chipboard with the fabric, so you can see how it will look like once everything will be folded over the chipboard edges. let's do the same with the opposite pair of corners. Here we go. And once again, let's just make sure that everything looks nice when folded. I think it does. So this cover, or I'd rather say cover base, is done. I am going to do the same with the second cover piece. And there we have it. For now, I'm not gluing these short edges to the chipboard just yet. We will do it later once we have our spinal section ready. So let's get to it now. We have this piece of cardstock that we have scored and folded. I'm also going to use fabric for making it more stable. And I have a piece of the same fabric that I used for the covers, but I painted it with blue acrylic paint. And I did it ahead of time because it needed to fully dry before we can continue. I will include the picture with the colors of the paints that I used. I mixed a little bit of the blue paint with just a tiny bit of brown paint, and also diluted both of them with water, and then used that mixture for painting my fabric. The reason why I used blue, because on some of the pages there is blue tone, and I thought that although it's a steampunk, I don't want to have everything in the shades of brown, so I think I am going to use maybe somewhere inside the journal on the pages some of the green colors too. And on the spine I wanted to have this blue, and then I also plan to use these papers on the covers of my journal. So if this is going to be the front cover and then this is going to be the spine, we could later on add some brown colored accents and also distress the spine, or maybe even stamp something on it, and altogether it should look nice. So that's the plan, at least for now. You have already seen how the album turned out, so I almost envy you, but right now I'm clueless as for where it will take me, but that's the idea so far. So I'm going to use this piece of fabric for attaching it to the cardstock piece and create the spine of my book this way. I don't need this whole fabric piece. I think I'm going to trim it. So first of all, it will need to be a little bit longer than the length of the cardstock piece, and it also needs to go only maybe 3/4 or a little bit more than half an inch more than the first score line on each side of this piece. So if I measure and then create a little cut and tear the fabric, sorry for the sound, I think we can add some stamping to the blue fabric first and only then attach it to the cardstock piece. I realized that I didn't have a lot of steampunk themed stamps, so let me just show you what I am going to use on the spine of this book. These are some old stamps, so I'm not really sure if you will be able to find any of them. So I'm going to use some of these cogs and maybe even the word steampunk. This set is by Graphic 45. I don't remember how exactly it's called, but these are the stamps which were included in it. I also am going to use maybe some of these stamps, and they were by Stampandas, and that's the name of the set. It's called Steampunk. I also have these hot air balloons. I'm going to use them somewhere, either on the spine or maybe on the pages of the journal. Although it's not related to Victoria designs, but I thought that I'm going to show you which stamp exactly I'm going to use. I already wanted to start stamping, but then decided that I am going to attach the fabric to the paper first, and this will allow me to better understand where exactly I need to place each one of the stamps. I think it will be easier to do it that way. So I am going to do exactly the same thing that we did before. I will apply some glue to the paper and then attach my fabric to it. Make sure that I heat set everything, and only after that, once I have a full understanding about where each one of my folds is and up to where the fabric reaches on those folds, I will go ahead and stamp. To add even more distinction to the folds, you can go ahead and use your distress ink on them. And I also think that I'm going to sew along the short sides, both at the top and at the bottom. I also want to rub some of the paint and ink off this fabric piece, and I'm using just a very old sanding block that I have. You are welcome to use even nail file or just a piece of sandpaper. Now I'm going to stamp. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with how it turned out. Let me show it to you closer. Again, any steampunk themed or steampunk theme looking stamps in your stash that you have could work for this. I'm sure you will be able to find something to match the steampunk style. Even stamping just numbers or some background text stamps is going to be awesome. Now I'm going to move back to the covers that I have started working on before. I will need to cut the paper pieces for the front and the back, and I have already started to show you what I want to use. This pattern, I think, is going to work nice for the front of our journal, and I think it will even be enough for the back cover too. Let me cut it to the size and get back to you. Okay, so I have cut the papers to the size, and let's think about it together. So both of the papers measure 10 3/4 by 3 3/4. I went ahead and distressed the edges of each one of those pieces. Now let's have a look. If we glue them down to our cover, you can see that the borders that we're going to have will be quite wide to my taste. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer of paper, and I think I'm going to use craft, and the craft matting paper piece will have to be 1/4 of an inch wider on each of the sides. That means that it will have to be 4 by 11. Here are 2 pieces. Let's have a look again at the cover with the additional piece of paper in there. Yeah, I think this will look better. So first of all, you can see that I have distressed the edges of the craft paper layers, and I'm also going to distress the edges of these chipboard pieces, which are covered with fabric, and then it all should look even better. So at this point, we can go ahead and glue the paper layers together. And I will also go ahead and glue this whole panel to the back cover, because I don't plan to have any special embellishments on my back cover in general, but I do think that I might add something to the front. So with the front, I'm going to wait, and the back paper panel can already be glued down to that chipboard cover. I'm still not very sure what I want to have on the cover, but I think I might have an idea, so I will try and do that. I have printed this page design, and I want to use this lady on the cover. I think I'm going to fussy cut her out. So I'm just roughly cutting her out from the whole page, and now I will have straight edges on the left hand side and at the bottom, but I will try to follow the outline of her clothes and body and fussy cut her out. I'll trim this edge as well. Now, if I will want to use her right here in this corner of the cover, she blends in too much with the rest of the background. That's why I think I will glue her down to the craft cardstock. I want to use this kind of closure with the magnetic button. This piece is 1 inch wide, and in my case about 5 inches long. I need to decide where the second part of the closure will be on the cover, but I think I can do it later. And right now what I want to do is I want to add this lady to the cover, and I can also glue this paper panel down to my front cover of the journal. What I want to do now is attach the front and back covers to the spine and wrap the fabric at the top and at the bottom, and I will show you how I do that. So you remember that 1/4 inch gusset that we left? That's when we are going to need it. So we will apply the glue, and I'm using here just some tacky glue because, again, I plan to use my sewing machine as well. I need just to make sure that the parts stay together at this moment. So I'm adding the glue to the flap, and I will now add the front cover to the piece which will be used for the spine. And I'm just making sure that I leave that 1/4 inch gap between the fold of the spine and the cover itself. I have the fold there, so it helps me and guides me as to where I need to position my cover piece on top, I will add the sewn line right here along the edge of the pattern paper. And here we go. This is how it works. I remind you that you should increase the length of the stitch to at least 3 millimeters or even 3.5. I increased it to 3.5 right here, so my stitches are quite long, and that's because we have quite a thickness here of layers. I'd suggest that you create a similar sandwich if you're not really sure of the abilities of your sewing machine. First, create a sandwich of the same thickness and try to stitch and see how it goes. Don't stitch on fast speeds, and always try it out first. I have already tried different thicknesses of different materials, so I know my machine, and it was able to deal with this thickness that I have right here. At this point, I am going to attach in the same way the second half of the cover, and it has been done too. We have 2 stitches on the cover, and our cover starts to get shape finally. Now what we need to do is to add some glue right here and glue down the flaps, the fabric flaps at the top and at the bottom. They will also cover parts of that paper, which is seen from the spine. Once you wrap all the edges, you can add the ink on the inside of the cover as well, just to make sure that it all looks the same. Also on the spine. And that's our cover so far. I'm still thinking about the ways of embellishing the spine. We need some accents here. So for the accents that I think that I'm going to use, I will add some little brads here and there. I will add some rhinestones in gold shades and use the super glue for attaching them to the fabric spine. It just adds tiny accents to the spine, and it looks way better, in my opinion. I have stitched where I wanted. I had to deviate from a straight line a little bit on this side, so it's really nice that the pattern on the paper is quite busy and it's not very visible. This mishap right here, I think that right now I want to add the pages and glue them down to the cover. Our flaps were 1.5 inch wide, if you remember. That means that to find a perfect placement for our signatures and attaching them onto the cover, we will first need to measure 1.5 inch from this fold on the spine. So we have a 1/4 inch gusset right here, so we don't take it into our calculation, and start measuring 1.5 inch from this section on the spine here, from this fold. Okay, so I will measure 1.5 inch here and 1.5 inch here, so that I could connect both of the marks and have a guideline that will help me line up the flaps of the signatures when I'm ready to glue them down to the cover. And I will do the same on this side. Again, I'm measuring from the fold in there, 1.5 inch. Okay. And from the fold, 1.5, and connect both of them so that we can better see up to where our signature flaps needs to reach. Let's rotate the cover, make sure that we have it all in the correct orientation. And now I will add the glue to this flap and line the edge of the flap with the guideline that I have created. I will also bear in mind that I will need to leave about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the signatures to the edge of the cover. Okay, at the top and at the bottom. And before we add the glue, let's just make sure that the threads are not in the way. So I will add some glue and just glue them down closer to the inside of the cover and not to the edges of it. I will add the glue to this flap here and line up the edge of the flap with the guideline that I have created, like so. Let's wait for a couple moments till the glue starts to set in. I think we can also snip the corners right here just a little bit so that the white paper doesn't show too much under the next set of papers that we are going to add to the insides of our covers. So I will snip the corners like this on this flap and also on this flap, and here I'll do it before I glue everything down. It will be easier. All right, I have added the glue, and now I will just hold the whole signature stack with my hand, and even the cover can also be folded so that we can reach with the edge of the flap the guideline that we have created on the back cover. And once the glue starts to set in, we can release and just make sure that we burnish everything nicely and glue everything together. And this is how our cover will look like so far. We are ready to work on the embellishments on the pages, and this is the next thing I'm going to do.